I'm not sure about Glock, but because I've only bought one, and the one that I bought, yes. Tom, yes. Now where I'm going with this is, when you buy a new firearm, you get, as a rule, so far everything I've bought anyway, you get 2 spent rounds. You get 2 casings, basically, that's been fired through that gun. Come in a little brown envelope. I says, did you get 2 empty cases? Oh, I didn't look. I said, well, it would be in the Glock case, you know, with your paperwork and everything. It's not in a separate bag or so. It's somewhere in that case that says Glock on it. She goes, I'm going to have to look. Why? I said, well, I'm not sure, but, you know, for the most part, I'm going to say that you should find 2 cases in there that's been shot through this gun. I says, the companies fire cases through the guns, you know, rounds through the guns. They send a couple cases with the gun when you buy it, and they keep a couple and they send a couple out. It says, and that's like an identifier. It's like a fingerprint. I said, now, it could be that maybe they stopped doing it. I don't know. I said, I'm not a big fan of them, so I couldn't tell you because I haven't bought any lately. He took. I said, but if they weren't in there, then I would start thinking twice. I says, because I would at least call up the Department of Public Safety and give them the serial number and ask if that firearm has been registered to anybody else. Because the place that she bought it from, I don't trust them too well. Now, what I'm thinking, what it could be, and I told her what it could be. I says, here's a few ways of looking at it. It could be just an honest mistake and they forgot to put the rounds in. Could be they don't do it anymore, right? Or it could be you got a used gun and didn't know about it. Because when they sold it to me for $690, you know, it was new. Oh yeah, I said, but let me tell you, if I was to come in and buy this gun from you, and then I have a problem with it, like we've been having, with even opening it, and after I fire off a few rounds through it, I bring it back to you telling you it's a problem, I don't want it. Well, you'll take it back, but you're going to need to really kind of take me to the bank. You know, you could anyway, where you should say, I'll send it back and take care of it for you. Don't worry about it. You know, you don't expect them to just say, well, here's a new gun. Because, you know, it is inventory. It is signed for, sealed, delivered, and all that. So you just can't give away money like that. I says, but they could have taken that firearm, looked at it, and said, this thing looks new. So instead of worrying about sending back and forth, doing all this, let's just clean it up real good, put it back in the box, and we'll sell it as new. Nobody's going to know, which you couldn't tell if it was new or used. If it was that new and that well cleaned, you know, only fired a couple of times, they fired at the, you know, at the factory, for crying out loud. I said, so, I said, the only way you're going to be able to tell if it was used or not is you're going to have to call up the Connecticut State Police Weapons Division, you know, Department of Public Safety. I says, and ask them if that serial number is registered to anybody other than who it is, which is you. Because they can't sell you that firearm until the, well, that's a freaky looking E. I'm going to have to do that over again. Yeah, I can see that happening. All right, I'm not going to worry about that. If they were to sell a firearm here in Connecticut, you have to call the Connecticut State Police, Department of Public Safety, Special Weapons. Now this is, you know, even though you have a store and FFL and all that. Now, they get on the phone and they're going to say, who you selling it to and what's their permit number? Can't buy a gun unless you got a permit here in Connecticut. Can't buy ammo unless you got a permit in Connecticut. So they're going to ask for the permit number, the name, and all that. They're going to ask for their number, meaning their FFL number. And then they're going to give you a transaction number saying, okay, it's safe for you to sell that firearm. And then you put that on the paperwork. So now, at that point, the state knows that this firearm has been registered and it's been sold. I bring it back to you. I don't have to bring it back to you. You don't have to, at this point, call the state and say you got it back. However, you have to make sure that you let the state know that you did take it back before you resell it to another person. So the state is looking at it as you selling it as used. They don't ask you how much you're getting for it and stuff like that. So meanwhile, you sell it as used, but you think you're buying it new, and the only one that's going to know different is the state. Huh, Nick? Because it had to have been registered to you before you were able to leave the door at the gun shop with it. Now, even if you bring it back to me and I call the state and say, listen, I'm taking this firearm back in trade or whatever, you give them the number. If it was a gun that you didn't know about, if I went in there with this, for instance, you'd have to call the state because you want to make sure the firearm is not stolen or hasn't been used in anything. So, you would call the state immediately and say, okay, I'm looking at this firearm, serial number so-and-so and so-and-so. Mr. So-and-so just brought it in. His permit number is so-and-so. But if I sold you the gun, I know the gun. So I really don't have to call the state immediately. It's not going to be one of my priorities until I sell it again. So anyway, I told her, if you call up the state, Department of Public Safety, talk to so-and-so, and let them know that you bought a firearm from, and you're just checking because you wanted to know if it's been registered to anybody else. And they will tell you. And if it has, they sold you a used gun as new. And you know what? If they did that, you're going to be getting a new gun of choice. Or even some better. Now, first of all, they did this to an attorney. She's a lawyer. She's not a real estate lawyer. She's not a criminal lawyer. However, she does do accident cases and stuff like that. But she's still a lawyer, which means her firm that she works within is also going to be standing behind her if there's a problem. So why would you screw with a lawyer? Well, then maybe they didn't know she was a lawyer. And as a rule, I don't think you're going to walk into a place and say, oh, I want to buy a handgun, and I'm an attorney, by the way. I mean, some may, because they're always looking for business. But it's just shady. Now, the same place that she bought it from, she's been around a long time, and I've done a lot of things and worked a lot of different places, so to speak. A lot of different assignments, let's call it that if you want. This place that she bought it from has been around for some time. But you're always hearing things, And it always seems like, well, it's just somebody that had a bad dealing with them, so they're just making it worse, and they're going to hype the story up because they're pissed off at him and they want him out of business, whatever the case may be. But I know somebody that knows the owner. He knows him. They're not friends, but they know one another. I guess you can call them friends. But they're not where they're going to sit down and have coffee or have a drink or anything like that. And he was telling me one day how this particular place had a few problems, but they were found okay and everything was fine and not a problem. And we figure if they still got their FFL, I guess everything is okay. The state would take it in a heartbeat, especially here in Connecticut. But still, I bought a firearm off him. And it was a new firearm on the market even. And they happen to have had one. I may have already told you that story. But it was a shotgun. 20 gauge, semi-automatic. And I was going to buy it locally, but 5 weeks later, they still didn't have it, telling me that they couldn't get it. Meanwhile, I called the manufacturer, and the manufacturer said, we're shipping them out. I can give you a place that has them in stock in Nevada. I said, fine. He says, let me have it. So he gives me the name of the place in Nevada. I called them up. He said, listen, I've been looking for this. I was just told by the company that you have it and that you're a distributor for them. He said, yeah. I said, well, I know as a distributor you can't sell it to an end user. I said, and you also need to be able to sell it to an FFL if it's coming into Connecticut. I said, so, there's a dealer right around the corner from me, which there was. And I said, I'm going to let them know, he says, and so they can order from you because I want it, and I've been waiting for it. He goes, oh yeah. He says, have them call me. He says, if they're not, listed with us yet, and signed up as a dealer, we can just take their information over the phone and take their credit card until they're clear, to have an open account. Oh, this is great. So there's really no wait. He said, no, he says, they call me today, it'll go out tomorrow. I go down there, I tell them about it, give them all the information. I'm still waiting weeks. They didn't want to pay for it with a credit card. They didn't have a company credit card, and nobody wanted to put it on their credit card. What? Jeez. What's wrong with these people? So anyway, I said to a friend of theirs, I says, you know what? They're going to be out of business within a couple of years. 3 years tops. And I think I told you. About 2.5 years after, they're out of business. Now, one of the owners, there was the main partner that had like 80%, and then there was another partner that had 20%. And then there was another guy that just worked there. But meanwhile, the place is going down the tubes. You start getting a bad rap, that's all there is to it. You got to know how to treat customers. People that are supporting your ass. So meanwhile, he decided if he takes, according to the other place now, the place that we're talking about that sold this Glock, allegedly used, which is in another town, the owner of this place knows him and says, yeah, we're going to close up and I'm going in partners with this other guy, and he tells me who. Now, I've already told, listen, I don't know everything, but I do know business. Usually I have a pretty good instinct on how to do and how to make. Hasn't failed me yet, let's put it that way. So I said to the guy, because again, he's the town, he's in town, and he tried to make it. First thing I told him on making it was a few things, which he, well, who are you to tell me? I'm not telling you, I'm just making suggestions. Does it hurt to try it? You got that much pride that you're willing to go out of business over it? So, he finally said, well, I'm going out of business. He says, the town is too high, the rent's too high. Well, I knew the rent wasn't too high because it was his wife's sister's building.